can be one of those sermons where I do that conversational thing. I don't yell. Wish me luck with that. I always get louder. It's my grandmother. She said, always speak to the people in the back. Make sure the people in the back can hear you. So I apologize if I'm too loud. We're here for the good of our souls, the good of our lives, because going to church does you some good. And what kind of good does it do? Well, all kinds of ways. Religions are about salvation, about bringing the ultimate meaning and redemption to everything into our lives, so that our lives are not a mistake or wasted. That somehow our lives make a difference, and the things we do matter, and we're not wasted. Salvation is traditionally seen as life after death. That this is just a vale of tears, and this is a time of trial and testing, and then in the afterlife we will have the joys of forgiveness and grace and being with God. And salvation is about transcending death. Salvation is about that. It is about somehow having this life not be all that there is. And so yes, the afterlife is a part of salvation. The idea that we are not just a bunch of molecules jammed together that accidentally make thoughts that say, I met Heilman, but that there is something more going on. The scientific reductionist way is to say, well, there aren't really nations, there's just states. There aren't really states, there's just people. There's not really people, there's just you. There's not really you, but there's organs. There's not really just organs, but there's, cells, and there's not really cells, but there's molecules. There's not really molecules, there's just atoms. There's not really atoms, there's just subatomic particles, and so forth. It goes down to nothing, and you wonder what's really real. But the idea of emergent qualities is, yes, you are real. And that your mind is real, and that your consciousness is real, and that there's something about that is not reducible in physics. So this is something that many religions teach, and it's certainly one that our Christian path teaches, and that is that we are somehow deeply real in a way that by God transcends death. Something to think about. But we also have to admit that largely we don't know, because we're not dead. And so people who are, have these near-death experiences, we can say, what was that like? But essentially, it's that we are to live our lives in a bit of mystery. And there's some ethical reasons why that could be. One ethical reason is they say if mom's gone out for a couple of hours and she says, when I come back, I want the dishes done. And he says, well, when are you coming back? And if she says, I'm coming back at 10 o'clock on the nose, then at 9:55 we'll start doing the dishes. And when she comes in, she'll go, what, the dishes aren't done yet? I'm doing them, Mom, I'm doing them. But if Mom says, I want the dishes done when I'm coming back, and you say, when are you coming back, Mom? She says, I don't know. Then it's up to you to figure out whether you want to do the dishes or not, whether she's going to catch you out or not, right? So that's one reason why the idea of not knowing can be an ethical, it makes it more up to us. It makes it more up to us. And so the same way with not knowing about the afterlife, it kind of makes it so that we don't just say, oh, I'm not really good, I just don't want to get punished. But the idea that we do what's right with a fair amount of uncertainty, it calls for things from a deeper place inside of ourselves. And as a Christian, I'm going to say, just the way God wants us to be, with a certain amount of not knowing, is good for us. Because who likes a know-it-all? So God leaves us with a fair amount of questions in our lives. So salvation is about transcending death. Salvation is also really about wholeness and right relationships. Because the whole idea of life after death is it's okay if you're in a right relationship, but if you're not in a right relationship, then an eternity of that doesn't sound very good at all. I love the Chinese philosopher Kung Fu Su, which we call Confucius. And his idea is you need to have right relationships with your parents, with your siblings, with the people you work with. Because in a short way to say it is, the afterlife is a family reunion that goes on forever. And so the idea is, so you better honor your father and mother because you're going to be spending a long time with them. And your sister and your brother and everyone, because you're going to be spending a long time with them. The idea that you can do something bad and then leave town, there's no leaving town. You're going to spend eternity together, all of us together. That's a way to look at it. So get your relationships right, because your relationships really do matter. And the other thing is if your primary relationships, most of all, we've seen this. You've seen it too. Have you ever talked to someone and they just start crying and you wonder, what on earth is going on? Or they're really angry, maybe even at you, and you think, but I didn't say anything, really. But if you looked and knew more, you would find out that that was just a presenting problem. The real problem was one of their primary relationships was broken. It's kind of like if you have a fight with your partner and you go into the grocery store line and the person has 1,000,000 coupons and they have this 2 big carts of groceries and they're in the 10 or less express line. And you can decide, how are you going to be in this life you have that now is going to have the next 20 minutes standing in line? Or, and what can make a big difference is if you're at peace with your spouse or with your child or with your mother or your father. If you're getting along with them, you'll be more likely to be able to go, oh well, this is life. Sometimes it's like this, and other times I walk up to the checkout counter and I get right through it. It's just like this. It's all right. And sure, she shouldn't, or he shouldn't, have gone into that line and with all those things, but I'll live. It's just a small thing. But if things are broken at home, if you just had a fight with your spouse, if you just had a terrible time with your kid or with your parents or at work, something like that, then it just cranks up the intensity of everything and you're much more likely to respond poorly. Something that you might regret later. And this is just a small thing. But it's what our life is made of. Small things. One small thing after the other. And so salvation is having a wholeness of our relationships. Because if our primary relationships are not well, nothing's well. And the most primary relationship of all, closer to you than your own mother and father, than your own partner, than your own family, is God. God who is within you and around you and loves you and cares for you more than you know. But to have that broken, then you're really broken. To be out of relationship with the deepest reality of who you are is to be astray somehow. And then like the bull in the china shop, you might go around doing damage, even thinking that you're doing good because something is amiss inside of you. And so the right relationship with God is where it's all about. Now I'm going to go to the Jesus story from the New Testament. Jesus is in with the scribes and the Pharisees and the things at the temple. And we know that our Savior did things like throw over the money changers' tables, and he had a real thing about money. And there was tax revolt going on at the time of Jesus. Some people who said, don't give those filthy Romans your money. No, they don't care about us, and God will set us free. history. Anyway, Jesus was put on the spot. In a sense, it was a Jesus trap. They were setting a trap for Jesus over taxes. We still get traps over taxes, don't we? I heard someone, I don't know if it was, I think it might have you been, Dick, when you said me the Will Rogers stuff, or, and, you know, he's like, it says taxes have made more liars out of people than golf, something like that. Anyway, he has so many witty things to say. So taxes have always been a trouble, and they were trouble back in Jesus' day. And this is what it says. Then the Pharisees, so these were educated men who knew the law, and probably argued about it quite a bit. Then the Pharisees went and plotted to entrap him in what he said. So they were trying to catch Jesus out and cause him to say something that they would be able to use against him. So they sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians, who were generally the wealthy partners with the Romans in occupying and running the country. They were sort of like puppet government for the Romans in the Jewish community. So these were people from the administration, essentially, the religious administration and the political administration, who wanted to catch Jesus out. And they start out with all these sweet, sugary words. So here's how it goes. Then the Pharisees went and plotted to entrap him in what he said, so they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are sincere and teach the way of God in accordance with the truth, and show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality." That's pretty high praise, I think, isn't it? I think it's actually legit. But they weren't being legit when they did it. They were just, smoothing them up, saying, "You're a good guy. You'll tell us the truth. We know that you don't respect anybody, that you just are for the truth no matter what." But I really like that they do say that you're a person who doesn't show partiality towards people. I think that's beautiful. And I wish we could grow more like that we would also be sincere, that we would also teach the way in accordance with the truth, that we would show deference to no one, and we would not regard people with partiality. We would just say, "You're a human being, I love you. You're a human being, God loves you, and let's work at this together." Well, so here now they set the trap. They say, "Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not?" So that was their trap. Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? Well, on the one hand, it's the law that you pay taxes to the emperor, because it's Roman law and your government, they made these agreements and you got to pay the tax, and it's the law. But there were other people who were saying the Roman occupation is not legitimate. There's nothing in the scriptures that say we need to be paying a foreign occupier, and God will set us free if we refuse to pay taxes. And they had had the successful revolt against Antiochus IV about a couple hundred years ago, and so there was groups that were split in the community. Some people who said, "You can't fight City Hall, might as well pay your taxes," and other people say, "You can fight City Hall, and we're going to start this, and we're going to throw those guys out of here." And within a few years after Jesus' passing and resurrection, 66 AD, they started a revolt that lasted for 4 years and killed a lot of people and lost. So tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? But Jesus, aware of their malice, because see, here's the thing. If he said yes, then he would alienate all the people who said, "You're just a suck up to the Romans. You're just you just don't have faith in God. You're just a part of the administration. You're an insider." And they'd alienate that. And they'd also, if he said no, they could probably arrest him on the spot and say, "Ah, you're a revolutionary, out with you. Call the guards, here he is, he's spoken against the emperor." So that's the trap they had for him. He couldn't say yes, and he couldn't say no. Either way, he'd get in trouble. So it's a pretty good trap. Pretty good trap. But Jesus, aware of their malice, answered their question with a question. He said, "Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites?" Well, he didn't exactly say, "You fine men." He said, "Why are you putting me to the test, you hypocrites?" Because he knew the same question that they were asking him, they were on the same hook. And then he says, "Show me the coin used for the tax." Now he didn't just say, "Show me a coin," which could have caught him out a little further. He was very specific and said, "Show me the coin used for the tax." So he says, the tax you're talking about that says you need to have a denarius, that thing, show me a denarius. And so they brought him a denarius. So already they're like, "See, you've got this coin in your hand that has a Roman emperor's face on it." And sometimes it would even say things on the Roman emperor, under the Roman emperor, that he was like the Son of God. Things like that. That was very hard for Jewish people to look at because it was blasphemous. So they brought him a denarius. And he said to them, "Whose head is this? And whose title?" See, it's not just the head. They knew that was Caesar. But it was also the title, which would say like Son of God or God made manifest or terrible things like that. And he said to them, "Whose head is this and whose title?" They answered, "The emperor's." Then he said to them, "Give therefore to the emperor the things of the emperors, and to God the things that are God's." Good answer. It's really a question, isn't it? It doesn't really, it kind of says, figure out what you owe God, figure out what you owe the emperor, and do both as best as you can. But when you can't do both, what you gonna do? But that's a great answer. And so to this day, I could say to you, and may God say to me through the words of Jesus, "Give therefore to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." Now, we don't have an emperor. We have presidents, and there's kings and queens and parliaments. But here in the United States, we have a president and the Congress and the Supreme Court. So it would be like, "Give therefore to the government the things that are the government's, and to God the things that are God's." It's not easy even there, is it? It's not easy. Because we don't always agree what belongs to the government and what belongs to God. Some people think more one way, some the other way. But really, that's the question. How should we be citizens? How should we be Christians in the world today? How should we give to the government the things that are the government's, and to God the things that are God's? Well, I can pretty much tell you, if the IRS wants your money and you say, "I'm going to write some paper money that says Jesus loves you $5 and send it in," they will not accept it. They want their own money back again, just like the Roman Empire did. They wanted their own money with their own emperors. In other words, they want the authorized money that you're working with. So there's that. But there are many times when we can get along just fine, thank you very much. And there's other times when we can't. But here's what happens. When they heard this, they were amazed, and they left him and went away. But the question, the answer of Jesus stays with us to this moment. Many, many times we have to choose. Is this a time when being a good citizen means going along? Or is this a good time where being a good Christian means going the other way? And we have to figure that out for ourselves. So, I'm going to give you an example of both. I made them kind of extreme examples, but I have a purple triangle here in my hand. I'm going to stick it here. During World War II, they put a lot of people in concentration camps. The worst thing they did was to pretty much the Jews. They exterminated Jews in the Holocaust with great intentionality and bureaucracy. They tattooed them, they marched them off to the gas chambers, they killed them on purpose. But they killed a lot of other people too. But the focus really was on killing Jews. It was quite horrendous, quite horrible. It's called the Holocaust or the Shoah, and it happened. But there were other people in the concentration camps too. I think that if you were gay, it was a pink triangle. And I forget what it was if you were communist. But if it was a purple triangle, guess what it stood for? It was called being a Bible student. A Bible student. And this was a Lutheran and Roman Catholic and evangelical reformed country. But you could still go into the concentration camp with a purple triangle on your uniform that said, "You're here because you're a Bible student." What had they done to be sent to a concentration camp? There were plenty of Lutherans and Roman Catholics that were Bible students that weren't in the concentration camps. Well, it all comes down to give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and to God the things that are God's. And most Christians said, we're Germans and we believe we need to defend ourselves against many times the encirclement of the British and the threat of the Soviets in the East, and so we need to fight for hearth and home, and it's our Christian duty to do so. But some of these Bible students, mostly Jehovah's Witnesses, but here we go. Karl Kuno, Joseph Rimple, Rupert Sauce, Karl Enstrasser, August Dickmann, Franz Jägerstatter, Hermann Starr. 112 Germans were executed as cowards and attention seekers. That's what they called them. Cowards and attention seekers. They were mostly Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses are, when you might say, well, maybe they're not really Christians because they don't believe in the deity of Jesus. But they sure did take the Bible seriously and follow Jesus when it said make no oath at all. And so they wouldn't make an oath. And they wouldn't become a part of the military, the German military. In a sense, they resisted the Nazis and the Hitler way. So we like that. We may not like it for our own conscientious objectors, but we can respect these men. They were mostly Jehovah's Witnesses, a small portion of other groups. Hermann Starr was the one conscientious objector who was Protestant. So apparently, according to this book, and it was from the German War by Nicholas Stargard, that there was only one Protestant conscientious objector that they know of in all of World War II for the Germans. So all the Lutherans, all the Roman Catholics, well, not Roman Catholics, there was a Roman Catholic too, but there was just one. So here's what they said for themselves. In other words, so many times we say, we know what your protest means, and we'll tell you what the protest means, because this is what your protest means to us. But we might not say, well, what are you protesting for? What is your what are you trying to do? Well, here's what Karl Kuhnel said. By the way, he was beheaded. They used the guillotine on him. There are others that were shot at firing squads. Some of them wore the purple. Here's what Karl says. He says, "It is not possible to act against my conscience, and so not possible to take up a weapon against a person and to do him harm." And that is his reason. He just said as a Christian he didn't believe in his conscience he could take up arms for Germany. And Joseph Rimple wrote, "I can claim with a good conscience that I am no criminal and not a murderer and robber. It is better, if it is the will of the Lord, to suffer for good than for evil." So for them, they said, you shall render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar, and to God the things that are God's. And they said no to the German government, and they were executed as cowards and attention seekers. The purple triangle. And not too many of them because it took a lot of courage to go against your own tribe, your own government, your own religion in many cases. So who's an example of going with the government, working with the government and not being the right thing? And I'm trying to follow the way of Jesus. He would always use an illustration with the man and then one with the woman. So I tried to find a woman who was really a good insider, a person who worked with the government. And I thought of Eleanor Roosevelt, about the same era. She was a delegate to the United Nations, helped get the United Nations started, for that matter. She was for civil rights and for African American rights and Asian American rights and rights for refugees. She was on the United Nations Commission of Human Rights. The point is, she was an insider. She worked with government, not against government. She was part of preparing the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. She was on John Kennedy's Presidential Commission on the Status of Woman. She was a lifetime Episcopalian. And she said the highest standard is the life of Christ, and it matters very little whether our creed is Catholic or Protestant. So she was sort of like a liberal Protestant, Episcopalian. And so render to God the things that are God's, and to Caesar the things that are Caesar's. So now, welcome to your life. And now you're in the trap. Who do you serve? When the questions are these things that divide us as a nation, guns, abortion, war, health care, Black Lives Matter, kneeling during the national anthem, LGBTQ rights, taxes, and more, we have the same question put to us as people who are followers of Jesus Christ. Is it lawful to do this or to do that? Is it right to do this or to do that? And the answer is a good one from Jesus. Look within and answer the question. Give to God the things that are God, and to the government the things that are the government's, as best as you can. May God help us all to be the very, very best citizens of the United States of America, and the very, very best citizens of God's heavenly realm as we can be. And I pray that there may be as few conflicts as possible, but where there are conflicts, I pray that we may follow the one who was crucified on the cross.